You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
All right, so welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. Tonight we have Andrew DeAngelo and Christopher Peak from Pipeline Consultation, and they're going to fill us in a little bit about what they have going on. And Andrew's been on the show before. We were discussing the Last Prisoner project last time he was on. Go ahead and check out that show. And Andrew's always got some great stuff going on. And if you're unaware of what Andrew has, please check out that show. So to get rolling right into it, we have Christopher Peak here. I would like to first introduce you, since you are our newest guest coming onto the show. So welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. It's great to have you.
Nice to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in the consultation firms, and a little history about yourself? Because there's a lot to get through. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been working in kind of business development, retail development, new store development, construction, design, development space for a long time. And I spent almost a decade at Apple as head of design, research and development, procurement, manufacturing, and for the retail group. I ran the global programming for that. Before that, I was at Universal doing development work for the studios. In the brick and mortar retail business development space, concept development space. So I've been doing this. Man, it sounds like I'm older than I am. I'm only 93, but no, I'm kidding. But I've been doing this for over 25 years. When I came out of Apple, I met Andrew and Steve DeAngelo. Even though I come from this kind of corporate high level corporate background, I also come from crazy hippies from the 70s. I was born in 67, and my parents were, bikers and smokers and growers. And so I'm very familiar with the space. And when I came out of Apple, I got to meet Steve and Andrew, and I started kind of bumming around with these guys and doing a little bit of stuff with them. And then a couple of years ago, about more than a year ago, I guess, I started developing with a partner of mine who's part of this pipeline thing, who's not with us, Aaron Carpenter, who was a chief marketing officer at North Face and was a senior guy at Levi. And we started doing, it's called ACV Consulting, and we started doing this development and marketing platform thing. And Andrew and I got to talking because we thought that actually, if we took our superpowers and Andrew's superpowers and, muddled them all together into one thing, we thought we could bring to the cannabis space some really effective, thoughtful support. And so that's what, it's basically Andrew and I started talking about it and started throwing stuff around. And out of that came Pipeline, which is what we've got now. And so that's that's a bit of the backstory.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So coming from a background that's so integrated in industry, such as yourself, how did you and Andrew feel free to chime in anytime now. How did you and Andrew kind of get I don't want to say the legwork, but the foundation built of how you're going to present solutions, integrating into the cannabis space, going from industry where it's, very, like you were saying, corporate, which I think people give corporate mindset, not just a bad mindset, but a lot of people don't have different perspectives or experiences. So how did you guys integrate into the cannabis aspects of what you're doing as well?
Well, from my side of it, honestly, part of the conduit is Andrew. And also I've done work, our agency's done work in the cannabis space, so we're not unfamiliar. I've been growing my own strains of cannabis for the last 10 years. So I'm familiar with that piece of it as well. I had a small company that we got crushed in COVID that was a tech product company for the cannabis space. So I'm not unfamiliar with it. I think the important thing is that leap from, call it, I'm trying to think of the right word, but call it corporate, for this conversation. That leap from corporate into this is actually not that complex. The idea is to do good work, to do it in an efficient and cost-effective way that'll have a positive impact. And so from the very beginning of my conversations with Andrew, it's been that, I think that you can bring a lot of efficacy and a lot of kind of systems management and a lot of, just to be honest, best practices over from corporate environments that have been successful into the cannabis space. The tricky thing is that I think a lot of corporate cannabis has come in and has tried to behave in a way that's a bit counterintuitive to the cannabis space. They're not always behaving like folks who understand the plant and care about the plant, or understand the impact the plant has on the planet and care about that. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I get to straddle the line a little bit, because I've been very high level in one space. I'm working in the other space. I come from the childhood that I do, and I've worked the experiences I've had. And so it's like you pick. It's absorbing what's useful, right? You pick the things that are helpful, you disregard the rest. But the cannabis industry, in order for it to continue to be a viable industry, to continue on its path to federal regulations that are supporting it, as opposed to pulling back on it, you have to have a level of legitimate business practices in place, a level of legitimacy around the brands and the approach. If it's successful and it's doing its thing in a good way, it gets easier and easier for things to get legalized. And so that was a big piece of this. It was like, hey, how can we be advocates? How can we help? How can we use whatever superpowers we have combined to get out there? So that's my piece of it. I'm sure Andrew's got other stuff to say about it, but it really has been, hey, we'd like to help, and we think we can help businesses without breaking their banks, to do a kind of a higher level job of existing in the space and implementing the best practices that are required to be successful in business.
Yeah, for me, pipeline answers the question, how do we create an excellent cannabis industry? We're not excellent right now. I hate to break it to everybody. And a lot of that has to do with bad public policy that makes it very hard for companies to be both excellent and grow at the same time. But a lot of that also has to do with folks being out of touch, like Chris said, with the cannabis community, the cannabis plant, heavy consumers of cannabis. We're not going to be able to build an excellent industry on the backs of the cannabis curious. We've got to get folks that love cannabis into the legal market. They're not in the legal market right now. And we also have to do a better job of speaking to folks like the cannabis curious. And what's happening because of the bad public policy and because of bad regulation, and because of, frankly, a lack of imagination within a lot of these companies and organizations, we're just not hitting the excellent mark. And there is a way to be excellent and affordable and deal with the taxes and the regulation and pay your 280E bill at the same time. It is possible to do it. It requires skill. It requires people who understand this stuff, who've been doing it. Like Chris said, he's been doing what he's been doing for 20, 25 years. I'm on year 40 in the cannabis trade right now. Chris and I were born the same year, 67. He's in year 40 or whatever as a consumer too. So you just can't make up for those years of experiences. I don't care how many MBAs you have, and I don't care how much success you've had in other industries. When you come into cannabis, and we've seen this all over the place, you have to invest the time and the energy to get people in the room like me that understand the culture, the history, the plant, the people, and the consumers, right? Chris knows how to tell that story in a creative and dynamic and engaging way that I could never do on my own. And so when we talked about coming together, this was essentially the problem that we're trying to solve, right? And we're really looking forward to working with all kinds of different companies in the space. You don't have to be a giant company to hire us. You can be a smaller company to hire us. The bigger companies, please hire us. So please hire us. We would love to help you rebrand, help you improve, help you get those heavy consumers into the door. We know how to do that. Okay. And present things in a way to the customers, particularly on the retail side, but also on the consumer goods side, right? Consumer packaged goods side, in an excellent way that makes people say, wow, this is a great story. And if the product and the experience matches the story, you're going to create customer loyalty. All right. And right now, there isn't any customer loyalty in the cannabis space except whoever has the biggest special that day. And it's a problem. Okay. This race to the bottom is not healthy for anybody. And so this is the solution that Pipeline is presenting to the industry. And, you know, it's going to be fun. We're fun guys to work with. We are creative in our processes. We do a lot of data crunching. We try to understand the entrepreneurs we're working with, what their backgrounds are, what their passions are, because all of these go into the story of your brand, the story of your company. And this is how Pipeline is a pipeline, right? Our graphic is literally a pipeline of all the different stages that you need to go from concept to cutting the ribbon on your business.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing too. Just to piggyback on that a little bit, it's a bit of a misnomer to say that I'm 100% corporate background. I've been involved in a number of startups over the years, in all kinds of different spaces. Taking a business from the starting line to a place where it can be profitable is a journey. And having gone through, there's lots of mistakes that happen in that journey. There's lots of failures that can happen in that journey. But having done that work over the course of my career, that's another important thing is, hey, we're not just saying to you, we'll come in and figure out how to give you the best look and feel. We're also saying to you, hey, we've run a lot of businesses. We've developed a lot of businesses. We understand the approach on creating a dynamic environment in those businesses so that they can be successful. Because we understand what failure looks like and what success looks like and the different paths of getting there. And so I think that's an important part of it too. And the other thing is not just startups, but also companies that are in transition or companies that are going, like you've had the company, you've kind of gotten yourself, you've been playing, you're playing defense all the time because things are coming so fast. You've gotten yourself up to say 10 or 15 employees or 20 employees or 30 employees. And you can't make that transition to going to the next level of scalability. And that's a place that I've certainly sat in a number of times. And there's a science to it. There's a path. And so we want to make sure that, we're not only talking about people at the starting line, but we're talking about businesses in transition. And that we can come in and we can provide leadership. And it's not just about providing services in the sense of, hey, we'll do your marketing, we'll figure out your packaging, we'll figure out your operational process, we'll figure out how your store runs or what your store design is. It's also that thing about being able to help you understand how to create efficient systems. And we're really reasonably priced, by the way. We're not super expensive. We're not trying to gouge anybody. We're just trying to do the best we can at the leanest price we can to help people out because it's about legalization.
Well, talk about how we've developed this so that our prices can get a little bit lower,
right. Well, certainly a lot of it is just that, you can churn a lot if you're working with teams who don't have a tremendous amount of experience. Mm-hmm. So part of it absolutely is that. Been here before, know how to get to the right decisions quickly. But the other piece of it is that, we're not, we've consciously made the decision. The teams that we have are remote. We do not office we're paying overhead of offices. Our remote guys are incredibly successful, award-winning people who want to work from home, want to work remote, want to have flexible schedules. So we kind of built this apparatus so that it could be something flexible and cost efficient. So we're not beating the hell out of people with overhead and honestly still kicking out just top-notch work.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a 5-figure price tag for 6-figure work. Okay, is basically how I put it. I mean,
you're the best sayings, dude. I just have to. I don't. But you've landed in the last 5 minutes. You've landed 3 of just. We should be writing that shit down. That's a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, because we're seeing some big rebrandings happening in the space. Like GTI just did a rebrand of their Rise dispensaries. I'm sure they spent $500,000 on that rebrand. We probably could have done it a lot more affordably for them. And I'm quite confident as good or better a job. So that's the kind of value that we're offering to the marketplace.
That's amazing. Well, that's something that I don't think a lot of people are even conscious of, right? I've had a few guests on where we discuss businesses, or I should say cannabis culture, the development of cannabis entrepreneurship, agriculture was one of my favorite conversations that I've had. But I think you really hit so well on what you're saying, both of your messaging, Chris, as well, where you're getting a connection, you're bridging gaps that people are unaware of, either in either phase, whether it's the startup, whether it's the mom and pop that been around for a long time and they want to transition to more of a corporate mindset, or if it's a corporate business that is developing and transitioning into a better rapport within the community, right? So it's just really awesome to hear that. It's a it's a great way to connect where you're going in the future, and even the way that you have your formulation, like your business, like utilizing the remote business, utilizing motivated individuals, keeping that overhead cost low so you can push forward that benefit to your clients, your personnel and yourselves as well, because let's be honest, like after the pandemic, right? We've learned a lot of things. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, I can work from home," right? I can do the same job, if not better, because now I'm not wasting an hour and a half or 2 hours in traffic. God forbid if you live in LA, which leads to my other question. What general regions do you guys serve your consultation services for? And what areas could somebody get involved in?
Anywhere. I've worked on every, obviously in my corporate background.
You got something going on in Japan right now.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
I've worked everywhere on the planet. So there's not, I'm very comfortable internationally. I'm very comfortable here in the States. I mean, obviously, we want to try to pinpoint those areas where we can be the most effective. So if there's when new licenses are coming online, when new areas are being legalized, but to go back to something you said a second ago, I just want to kind of emphasize something. If we can't run our business efficiently and effectively so that we can keep our costs down and provide great services, we have no business going to try to tell somebody else how to do that, right? Because the truth of the matter is, when you go into a business and start looking at those things that call them constraints that are causing the company not to be able to do the things it wants to do, oftentimes what you're talking about is structure, operational structure. You're talking about staffing. You're talking about technology. What kind of system? What's your operational tech stack, and how is that thing motivating your business forward? Looking at things like your website functionality. Where's your platform? All of that stuff. We do that for ourselves. We do that for other people too. It would be hypocritical for us to be expensive and obnoxious and then go in and start to say, "Hey, listen, these are the things we recommend that you do." Right? We have to do that ourselves too. So there's an acumen there that spreads across not only our own systems, but the systems of others. Right?
That's awesome. Yeah, because you're living the example and you're setting an example forward to have other businesses emulate. Right. So it's like I just had this great conversation with the gentleman where he's into the influencer space. Right. And he was a prior Marine. Of course, I always love tying in the whole military aspect of the show, right? Where you have to embody somebody worth emulating, right? So if you're on post or blah, 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 the way you look, the way you dress, the way you conduct yourself as a gentleman, right, is 100% how you'll be perceived, because perception is king, right? So when you're doing this and you're emulating yourselves and you're able to reflect upon cumulatively, 80 plus years of not only consultation, but integration in the culture, integration in the corporate mindset, but then also having those unique experiences to bridge that. And I love saying this, bridge gaps, because that's tremendously what's needed, not only in consumerism, but in policy reform. And politicians and, people they serve, right? And being able to communicate on a level where, hey, I understand how these things operate and I understand the technicalities behind it to get it to function. So integrating all of what you do for a business, and you have competitive pricing, what type of services would somebody be looking at? Because let's take the two scenarios. You have the startup. Hey, I got this great idea. I'm reaching out to Pipeline. How do we initiate that first, I would say, call to action?
Sorry, you want to take that?
No, sorry, I had a little Zoom gap.
Okay,
my screen paused up. So I missed the very end of that, but Andrew, I didn't catch the very last part of the sentence.
What is the process by which all the different steps we take for a startup or somebody that is more than a startup and needs growth help?
Got it. I understand. So there's the first part always is intake.
Okay.
Right. In which we're not charging anybody for we're not charging anybody for the early conversations. We just want to sit and have an understanding. So it's a bit of an audit, really. It's like, where's your company at? What does your staff look like? What are your goals?
What your idea is? What is your basic idea if you're a startup?
Yeah. What's your concept?
Vision? Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the entry point is really this kind of audit. We need to audit the business. We need to audit perspectives. We need to audit goals, as Andrew just said. How much experience do you have in the space? Like all of those things that are really important to be able to understand who you are and what your business is and how you want your business to move forward. Oftentimes, and then there's another layer of those audits where we can go in and, as an example, if you are online and your business is, you're on Instagram, you're on one of these things, you have influencers. Let's say you have that much work going on. Those are kinds of audits we can do as well. Digital audits, a retail audit if you're retailing. Ways of just understanding as much information, as many inputs as we can get, so that we can then kick out a recommended approach to how to help.
Awesome.
So that's the first step. Like, really, I can't help you unless I know you, bro.
That's so true, right? You have to build that rapport and establish a bit of a foundation.
You have to understand, right? Like lots of people come in, just to be blunt, I see this all the time where people come in with these kind of blanket generalized approaches to things. And they're like, hey, here's our system. Systems analysis is one of the most interesting bits of kind of scientific mindful approach is a systems analysis, looking at systems. There's a great book I read back in the 90s called Gödel, Escher, Bach, Mathematics of Gödel, the paintings of Escher, and the music of Bach, and using systems analysis to break these things down and understand them. And it's the same systems analysis across all three of those. It doesn't require it doesn't require a different analysis approach, but the analysis is what's imperative. And because we've been doing this for such a long time, I can generally sit down with folks and I can get out of them enough information that I can kind of come back to them with here's a proposal. Here's what I would suggest you do next. And it's also about not making it so that it's so stiff. A business should be able to onboard and offboard at any time in the process. Hey, if you want us to help you understand your roadmap and help you kind of guide your business on how it's going to move forward with a plan for 1, 2, or 5 years, great. At the end of that plan, if you want to offboard and go do that yourself, then we helped. If you decide you go through that process and you're like, hey, we actually need this and this and this work, and Andrew and Nair need to come in and help us out on the operational side, or Andrew's got some of the perspectives on the grow and great, we can pick that up. And if you at the end of that you want to off ramp, great, we'll pick up the next. Then you pick it up from there and take it. Like, we're trying to be as operationally flexible as we can be. We're not in any way saying to somebody, listen, the only way you can be successful is if you get us involved at the beginning and you keep us all the way until, you're 5 years down the road. That's not the case. In fact, sometimes what we end up doing, and I'm doing this right now with a couple companies already. Sometimes it's just a matter of just bringing us in a leadership I'm a fractional, we use the term fractional in the industry a bit. I'm a fractional CEO with a business right now, where I give them X amount of hours a week as their CEO to help guide their company. And then we pull projects and programs together out of that and pull our teams together to help, huddle up around this issue, huddle up around that issue, pay for it in a moment, and then they're not paying anymore. So there's lots of ways that you can skin the cat, right? I'm always frustrated by the inflexibility of a lot of agencies when they come in and start dropping what they consider to be the truth. It's not the way the world exists. You have to be malleable. You have to look at these things and make and provide alternate decision-making paths and be able to express what you think the outcome. If you go down this path, here's what I know might happen, right? So it's really that advocacy thing.
Yeah, and just to add to that, our industry has a tremendous amount of churn, especially at the executive level. And this is where the fractional leadership services that we could provide can be add a lot of value to a company, because a lot of times companies will move on from more than one executive at a time. Maybe they have to cut costs. Maybe their investors or their board's not happy with how things are performing. And then what do? Who leads the company? Who is that interim leader that leads the company until a search can be done by the board for somebody that's even a better fit? So those are services we also provide. Chris mentioned Nair, my partner. She's an operations expert. Stephanie Thomas, another partner of ours, is a commercial real estate expert, and an excellent CFO, fractional CFO. She's a numbers wizard. Chris has a bunch of people on his team that can be CMOs. And so we hope that folks will take advantage of those services that we provide for Pipeline, especially in an industry that's experiencing the kind of churn that we are right now.
Now, do you feel as though the volatility, you're saying churn, and I've noticed that, people say churn right now. I just kind of caught on to what you meant by that. The slow.
Well, that just means turnover of people. One CEO lasts 6 months, then there's another one, then there's another one, then there's another one. And it's just been tremendous churn as stock prices have crashed, right? And as capital is dried up, everyone wants to blame the leaders.
That's so true. That's so true.
So that's what happens.
I mean, but that fractional thing becomes interesting there, right? Because listen, if you have a company and it's not doing well, and you're like, damn, we're going to have to kick out our COO and our CEO, who you were paying full time to be involved in your company, who had who knows what kind of experience to be able to run a company or run a business doing what you're doing. And you said, well, if I could get 2 days a week, someone who is an executive at Apple, someone who is an executive, someone who has a lot of long in the tooth and a lot of success and a lot of and the failures that you learn from, which I always want to say to people, listen, as I always like when I've had very large staff in my life at times, and I'm always telling younger staff, look, man, you got to fail, because you don't learn without some of those failures. You got to risk, you got to try things out, you got to fail. That wisdom becomes the thick skin on your back that allows you to be more successful in the mid parts of your life, right? But if you can pay somebody to come in 2 days a week to bring that level of experience, as opposed to having somebody there 5 days a week and you're paying a tremendous amount for them, and maybe they didn't have as much experience or as much success, that's a win. And the costs aren't insane. The hourly cost for that kind of work isn't insane. So as part of what we do, it's a really nice piece, because to be honest with you, I ran this, my budgets, I think, our budgets in the department I was in Apple in 2016 was like over $1.5 billion, right?
Jesus.
Hundreds of employees, massive company, managing that enchilada across offices in Hong Kong and Shanghai and London and Cupertino, and developing, and I'm on a bunch of different patents with Apple for a lot of this material